Hey, you guys, the Otherppl podcast is offered freely. All episodes of this show are available for free, nearly 600 episodes and counting. All of it is free. If you would like to support this show, throw a few bucks in the hat. You can do that at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Thanks.
You are not alone. You have found other people.
You and I have a friend in common.
Every stupid thing that a writer could do, I've done.
I think it's really beautiful.
Big West struggle, you know?
It was incredible. It was like your head exploded seeing what was really there.
And now here's your host, Brad Listi.
Just one person at just one time.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to the Otherppl podcast. I'm Brad Listi. Here I am. How are you doing? I'm in Los Angeles. I am back for another episode. It's good to be with you. I have Chip Cheek on the program. Chip Cheek. He's got a novel out, his debut. It's called Cape May. It is available from Celadon Books. It has been earning rave reviews, starred reviews. It has a lot of sex in it, which you don't see enough of, really, in literary fiction. So it was great to meet him and great to talk to him. Chip Cheek. His novel, again, is Cape May. That conversation coming up momentarily. I do have some mail to get to. A listener named Jeffrey writes, Brad, just wanted to share listener feedback on episode 589 with Steve Almond. I really enjoyed this particular conversation as it gave me a lot of food for thought in concern to the struggle of the inner life. I have personally been going through a tough time over the past year, even succumbing to suicidal thoughts for the first time in my life. Not that I would go through with it, I wouldn't. But hearing that voice within me was terrifying, particularly since I'm a dad with a loving, supportive wife. While a part of me wanted to avoid this voice and shun it, instead I made a point to pause and create enough space and awareness to listen, since it was vying for my attention. And I essentially asked myself, what is it you're trying to tell me? In doing so, I realized that there were a number of traumatic occurrences in my life that I had never truly faced head-on, that were still festering wounds. It all took place within a 2-year period, one after the other, including the death of one of my best friends from brain cancer, my father's sudden diagnosis and death from leukemia, and another close friend's suicide. In between this all, my brother-in-law's family was brutally murdered in an act of gun violence, which created a rage within me. Steve hit the nail on the head in talking about our avoidances of our thoughts and my journey over the past few months to address this in myself, even more so than I previously had tried, really resonated with me. On a side note, this is why your novel, Attention Deficit Disorder, continues to hit home for me and why I've read it so many times over the years. It was one of the first books I read after my friend Jeremiah died of brain cancer. It made me feel less alone at a time that I felt entirely alone. I know I've told you this latter part before, but I'm telling you again. I appreciate the words you write and the conversations you have with other writers. They are more than simple words on a page or audio files on the internet. Take care, Jeffrey. So thank you, Jeffrey. This is an unusually honest, embracing letter, and I appreciate the kind words. I think something that you said strikes me in particular, and that is the way in which we relate to our own traumatic experiences in life, and the way that if we live long enough, we all have some. It's unavoidable. We're all going to be traumatized by existence. And when I look back on just about anything creative that I've ever done, it seems to be a response to trauma. I don't know if this is the way everybody does it, but I think it's the way that I do it. And I don't know if I was completely aware of that until recently. So I share that with you, Jeffrey. I share coming to the realization that there is deep trauma to be grappled with a little bit later, after the fact, or in a delayed manner. Maybe that's just the way it goes. But when I look back in particular on the writing of my novel, I spent my 20s doing that essentially. And it's a novel about suicide grief. It's a novel about other things too, but it's a reaction to suicide grief, which as many of you know, I experienced when I was in college. A buddy of mine took his own life, and it was a big shock and a pivotal experience and an overwhelming experience. Probably the loss, like the experience of loss in my life that had the deepest impact on me. It really shook me at that particular moment in my life. Age, like 19, what was I? Age 20. And I look back and I'm like, I think that's what I was doing. I never went to therapy, though I should have. But I spent my 20s essentially locked in a room trying to write that book. And you know what? It was good for me. It did have a therapeutic effect. And the book that I've been working on forever and ever, and I still haven't gotten, I don't know if I ever will get, is me grappling with 5 miscarriages and with my son's diagnosis. He's got some difficult health challenges. But even though that book hasn't come together in a way that I feel great about, it's just a very difficult book to write because there's so much sadness and I don't know how much to reveal, and I just haven't gotten to the place where I feel good about it. And it's really like not a book that I'm in a hurry to work on sometimes, just because it's a heavy weight, I don't know what the best approach is. But having said that, I still feel like the time that I've spent on it, which has been considerable, is far from being time wasted. That's my therapy. And maybe it's not the most elegant form. Maybe there's more that I could use. Almost certainly that's the case. You could always use more, right? But I have done a lot of work. And I think there's something to be said for, just as Jeffrey says, instead of shunning the dark stuff or the difficult stuff that comes up, whether it's a suicidal thought or it's deep grief or it's just a kind of persistent ennui, self-criticism, self-loathing, whatever it is, the way through is through. That's what Steve Allman was saying when I had my conversation with him that aired last week. And I think it's wise advice. And writing is certainly a great way to deal with stuff. I guess what's interesting is the way that we can be dealing with stuff in writing without actually knowing the degree to which we're doing so, or even that we're doing so at all. Sometimes I think for people who work in a really layered way, imaginatively, they think they're writing a book about Middle Earth or, witchcraft or wizards or something less fantastical that still is at a great degree of remove from their actual lived experience. And then after the fact, you get a little bit of perspective on it and you realize like what you were actually doing. And, I don't know. I could ramble on about this for a while, but I appreciate the thoughts, Jeffrey. Thanks for the letter once again and the kind words. Hang in there and keep writing it down. My guest today is Chip Cheek. He was here, not too long ago. Came over, sat down, we talked, and it was just great to meet him. His debut novel, Cape May, is out there now from Celadon Books, and it's a terrific novel. Booklist calls it a remarkable debut novel. Starred Review, Kirkus Starred Review. Kirkus says it feels like a classic. So it's a great way to debut, to say the least, and I'm glad I caught Chip at this particular moment. So here he is, folks. This is Chip Cheek, and his novel, one more time, is called Cape May.
So I grew up in Texas, and I lived in the New York area for about 5 years, and then I moved to Boston to go to graduate school at Emerson College, and that's been home. It's the place I feel most at home, actually, is in Boston, in Somerville specifically. But we moved out here because this is where my wife grew up, and
in the city,
in El Segundo. Oh, okay. Which is just south of the LAX airport. We can actually see the fins of taxiing airplanes from her driveway. So when we had when our daughter was born, we kind of knew we were gonna have to come out here to be with her family and the extra, the child support and stuff. So
it's no small thing.
It's no small thing. And, the book and the baby happened at the exact same time, so, I mean, I finished the book and a month before she was born, and sent it out to got it signed with an agent a month after she was born, and a month or two after that it sold.
Wow.
And so it literally happened. It was happening at the same time. I was, celebrating the book news at like 4 a.m. while bouncing a newborn baby. It was just totally upended my life, completely changed everything about my life. So
how so?
In every way. I mean, we'll talk about that. I mean, when we talk about like my writing habits or process, all of that is in the past tense because I have no idea what it is now. It's been almost 2 years since then. She turns 2 in August. And I still haven't figured it out because 6 months after she was born, we moved out here. And that was yet another, turning our lives upside down. It is completely different out here. I love it. We're still living with my mother-in-law, we don't have our own place. We're still in this just floating liminal zone, of our lives. And it's just changed. It's been overwhelming.
Yeah. It's a big adjustment. It's not an uncommon story for somebody to work like crazy on a book with the arrival of a new child impending.
Right. No, it's so true because when we found, I had 3 good chapters, 3 chapters that I liked on this book. And then, Katie, we got the news that we're going to have the baby, and I was like, "Oh shit!"
Were you trying for a baby?
We were. Yes,
okay,
yes.
So it wasn't like some big surprise.
No, it wasn't a surprise. But when it happens, it's suddenly the clock gets really serious, and I blew through the rest of the book in the next 9 months. Like I said, I finished the draft a month before she was born, and then I gave it to my writing group. And we met about it about a month later, and 4 days after that meeting, the baby arrived. So,
what's the birthday?
August 3rd.
Oh, I'm August 1st.
Oh, really? Oh, my God. Cool. Yeah.
So, yeah, and my sisters are in August, my daughter's in August, my anniversary's in August. Everything's in August.
Bunch of summer let's all get together and have a giant summer
just
birthday
knock
party.
it out. Wow, that's great. So this book, it's one of the, I think it's a fairly rare story of it really shot out of you. Once you got it, like it's a circuitous path, so I don't want to oversimplify it. Like you were writing in a vein that was not a fit for a while,
right? And
sort of working against it, and having that kind of dread creep in, where all of a sudden you're like, "This is really not fun."
Right? Exactly. Yes.
Which I know well.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I mean, you tell the story about what was it that turned the drudgery into something where you were extremely generative and excited and didn't want to get away from the keyboard.
Sure. I mean, I think it really had to, like, I've taught creative writing for years, and I would tell my students, sort of like follow your bliss or some version of that cliche, but it's really hard to follow that model yourself, and I think it was, getting so frustrated with writing what I thought was like important, like deep, big literature stuff. And finally getting so frustrated that I no longer cared anymore and throwing it all out and saying, I'm just going to write whatever I want, whatever thrills me. And then ultimately finding that that's actually the stuff, that's the good stuff, that I should have been after. So yeah, I had been working for a couple of years. I mean, really several years just trying to write any novel. But I was working with material from my family's past. I'm from Georgia, and my family goes back generations in Georgia. And
but you didn't grow up in Georgia.
I didn't grow up I was born there, but I grew up mostly in Houston, Texas, just outside of Houston. But I was writing a novel that was right before I was working on Cape May. I was writing a novel that drew on events from my family's past, and it was a dark, violent novel set in Georgia in the Jim Crow era. And the material was good; it was really interesting. But I was spinning my wheels with it. I mean, in anyone else's hands, I mean, it involved like a murder and in race and class, and in anyone else's hands, I feel like it would have been a riveting book, but I would keep getting distracted by love stories. Like I would be like, okay, let me try to figure out this character. So, what's the best way to do that? I'll have him hook up with someone and send them off into the woods, and they're going to do something naughty. And I'd be like, wait, that has absolutely nothing to do with this, this murder and race and all that. So I'd be like, okay, backtrack. So finally, and this happened a couple months after I got married, which is probably not a coincidence. Finally, for reasons that made sense at the time, I married my main character Henry to a then minor character Effie, and I sent them on a honeymoon to Cape May, New Jersey. And once I got them there out of their context, out of the context they'd been in, it was like the sun came streaming through, and I couldn't stop writing. I was writing a completely different novel. And it was like nothing I'd ever written before.
Okay, was it because you saw the plot, or was it because you just loved this world context?
Yeah,
the characters suddenly became more visible. Like, what was it? What was the sunlight?
The sunlight was, well, first of all, seeing these characters that I had known for a long time, and they're sort of steeped in the rural South. Suddenly seeing them in a totally different place, like Cape May, New Jersey, and it was the setting and situation. It was these naive characters in a town like Cape May in the off season, this desolate town where suddenly the normal rules don't apply, and they can be whoever they want to be. Like, I think the feeling I got both for their characters and for me as a writer was I was in this world with unlimited potential.
It's like Burning Man.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. yeah. Right. And I just couldn't pull myself away. I mean, suddenly, where I'd been steeped in like cotton fields and in Main Street in Signal Creek, Georgia, this fictional town, suddenly there was gin and parties and a lot of sex and and houses to sneak into, and I could not pull myself away from it. There was nothing like I was trying to say. I had no message. I literally just wanted to be in that world. It was thrilling. So I remember, Katie and I would be watching TV before going to bed, and she'd go to bed, and I'd think, okay, I'm just going to check in with my novel. This would be about midnight. I'd be like, I just see how it's doing, and I would go and open it up and just play with a paragraph, and then it would be 4 a.m, and I'd written 2,000 more words.
Wow.
And I never write like that. I never wrote that way. And I finished that first draft in 2 months in a fever dream.
How many words?
It was 300 manuscript pages, almost to the
double spaced.
Double spaced, yeah.
So it's probably like close to 70K, right?
I don't know. Maybe.
Wow, that's still a lot.
It was a lot. I mean, I've never written anything like that. I mean, of course, it was a train wreck, but it was a beautiful train wreck. I couldn't wait to like revise it and get back to it.
Okay, so let's just make sure that people have like an aerial view.
Mm-hmm.
How long were you working on the version that didn't work? That was like mired in the South.
Oh, the previous. I don't even think of that as a version. It was just a totally different novel. I mean, when I sent them to Cape May, it was probably 3 or 4 days later. I wrote in my notebook, this is the novel. That other thing is not what, that's not the novel. It was a completely different novel, and I was able to sort of dump all those other pages.
But how long did those other pages take you?
Yeah, those other pages, which I don't even know how many of them there would be. It was 2 to 3 years probably of grinding through that, and then before that was another 2 to 3 years of grinding through another failed novel attempt. But in a similar world.
So this is actually I think I was mistaken earlier. This is actually more along the lines of the norm than like, because it wasn't just like it came to you and then it shot out of you. It was like, this is like after false starts, 2 or 3 years of working on something that didn't work.
Right.
But then once you got it, and that I think the novel that I wrote, it was sort of similar. I wrote like really bad, just failed piles of pages.
Yeah.
And then once I somehow got one that sort of worked, it was like 4 months.
Awesome. Yeah.
For a draft, or 5 months,
Right.
And then revising. But
right.
That's so exciting. So do you have a takeaway? Like, is there any way for you to recreate circumstances? Do you feel like you have a formula, or like at least like an internal barometer to look for when you're writing now that you've experienced it?
Right. Nothing. I mean, I remember writing a note to myself, like, just remember how this feels, obviously.
Did you carve that into your arm? Or
no, well, I wrote it into a little index card that I kept, tucked in,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's silly. I mean, but it's important. I think it was helpful to me because, like, if I'm grinding through something and it doesn't feel like fun, I know that this may not be the thing, but I may need to like stick with this until I wait for the thing that shines. I'm being very inarticulate about this, but it's to like, don't despair. Maybe is maybe what the note means. Which is like, just keep working. Like, I'm not waiting for inspiration. It's the point is to keep showing up at my desk and like working and grind through the process until the light comes in, and something hits. And then I may do this for 2 years and everything I wrote may be dumped. But that's okay because I got to this thing and it's totally worth it.
And knowing when to dump a lot of work, that can be tough for people.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, well, wait, because there can be I think people can get confused, myself included, by this notion of persistence and not giving up.
Yeah.
At some point, sometimes it's wise to give up. You're on a path that's not working. You need to recognize it as such.
Right.
Maybe take either what you've learned or take whatever gold you can mine from that pile of pages and then move on with it and start in a new direction.
Right. And I mean, it's not like you're really going to lose anything. You put it in a file, you can always come back to it. But I've never felt sad about dumping anything. I mean, I feel like it's really exciting to try a new direction, and sometimes I think I'm a really slow writer, but then it's not that. It's that the good stuff is so few and far between. When I find the good thing, I'm actually a very fast writer, and I can be a fast reviser too. So I don't despair that, like, oh my God, I've been working for 2 years and I have, nothing, and when I find it, is it going to be like, does that mean it's going to be 6 years before I have something that's good? And it's like, no, it could be like 3 months from now, before you have kind of a completed rough thing, potentially. So,
but there's no like dread of like, oh my God, I got to start over on page 1.
No, because I mean, you start in the middle of things. I didn't know where, Cape May. I don't know when I started working on it. It started, I guess, with the decision to send them to. Well, it was the decision to marry those two characters. So I mean, the first draft of Cape May actually begins with their wedding. You start with the most exciting thing, and I don't start with an intro or a prologue. You just jump in, and that's what you're taught to do anyway.
Right. So, like start in the middle of the river, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and start where it's most exciting to you, and go. And then if at the end you realize, oh, that wasn't the right starting place, then you can obviously go back and in revision and rewriting, change it. But
were you working? I mean, you were working in kind of a. I guess there's a tradition of honeymoon novels.
Sure, yeah.
Were you aware of that? Like, was that something that was on your mind as you were writing this, or is it something that, like, retroactively you sort of go, oh, yeah, there's like a set of these out there?
Right. Retroactively, I mean, I'm vaguely aware of it. I mostly knew about On Chesil Beach, which I did not read. I pointedly didn't read until I'd finished the book.
Which is Ian McEwan.
Yeah, Ian McEwan's book. And so, yeah, but I I didn't want to be like, I wasn't playing against form or type or anything like that. I was writing it blind to all that stuff.
And did you have any sense of an ending? Were you just making it up as you went, or did you have a target that you were headed towards?
I knew, I had a sense of like how I was going to end the book, and to some extent I knew, well, I don't know if, I don't really care about spoilers, but I knew they would stay together, and I knew that I knew the move I was going to pull, the last chapter where it kind of opens up to the rest of their lives. I had a sense of that. But otherwise, I wasn't sure. I mean, I had a setting and situation and characters that I was interested in, and tension, sources of danger, and I felt like that's all I needed. It's like that Yale Dr. O quote about writing a novel is like driving in the dark with your headlights on. You can only see so far, but you can get the whole way there. And it's kind of how I felt writing this book.
Yeah, and human relationships are just fundamentally odd, especially like intimate human relationships.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's something that comes to mind, both as a reader and as a married person, and just as a person in general. Like living with another human being, making that commitment. Like there's a fundamental unknowability to another human, no matter how well you think you know them.
Right.
No matter how much time you've spent. We all carry all this static internally, and I don't know if you could ever fully tease it out of somebody,
right,
or have it teased out of you. We're sort of like closed systems in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just, I mean, it's inherently interesting, moment, especially in this time period that it's in, because it's like,
oh yeah, the book is set in 1957.
Yeah, and so they're getting married in a time when people, especially women, were expected to be married at a very ridiculously young age. So it's not even that they don't know each other. I mean, they can't know each other, but they don't even know who they are. They have no. I mean, they're not fully formed adults yet.
The whole notion of anything even a remotely virginal honeymoon has always seemed nightmarish to me.
Yeah, right.
Like, I can't imagine anything more awkward and like, just like, no, that's not how it's supposed to go.
No,
that's a totally terrible idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess sometimes it can work, but man, like that's...
That was part of what was so interesting about the situation of the book. And I wanted to just go deep in on that, really, really intimately explore, more or less good, well-intentioned people who trying to, navigate this situation. And I wanted to tell it from, a perspective that was more intimate than anything I'd seen before. So, for example, their first night, he is lying there in bed feeling a bit gassy and worrying he's going to fart in the night with her, and that's like a legitimate concern. Because when you think about, I'm married to this person who, I've always brushed my teeth and been very clean before going on dates. And now suddenly I have to go to the bathroom and she's here and the bathroom's right over there. And I never thought about that before. Like, how are we going to navigate this? How do we be cool like this? And she has her, cream on her face and, those are the kinds of things where suddenly like, oh wow, there's these little details of intimacy.
Like real physical intimacy.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and what about writing sex scenes? Mm-hmm. Because you don't shy away. Mm-hmm. Right. Did you study? Like, this is something that I would be like worried about, because there's like the Bad Sex and Literature Award.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and it's like it seems like a really easy thing to screw up, or at least it's like easy for people to mock. Like, did you care? Right. I guess you just have to shut that out and just write it.
I did. I mean, I'd mentioned earlier with the previous novel attempts, I kept sending people off into the woods, it was clearly a subject that I was interested in. And so I sort of gave in, and my frustration at not being able to finish anything or even get traction on anything finally turned into, well, I don't care what people think anymore. If this is literally a trashy sex book, I don't give a shit. Apparently that's the kind of person I am. I'm just going to have to reconcile myself with it.
You're a sick pervert.
I'm a sick pervert. Yeah. If that's what happens, fine. And so I just went full steam ahead. I did not care. And wrote the scenes as I thought they should be written. I was trying to be I wasn't trying to be hot or anything like that. Sex is an action like any other in fiction, so it's
a honeymoon novel.
Of course, there's going to be sex, obviously. Like any action, it has to be relevant and move the plot forward, reveal character, all these things. So I knew that, and I just wrote them as honestly as I could, and then, suffered over revising them. I mean, they were extremely hard to write, and so it was kind of like fun to like, write them the first time. And then I, in revision, I rewrote and suffered over every word.
Did your like wife read it? Like, is she like a reader for you?
No, not at all. No. No.
She's like, honey, you're doing it all wrong.
Yeah. She's like, I've been meaning to tell you about this. This is not how that works. Yeah. No, and it didn't even have anything to do with sex. I mean, my wife is an incredible reader. And I mean, we also met in grad school. And she's a great writer as well. And so it was more, I didn't want her to divorce me for being not talented, so I wanted her to I wanted to make the book as good as it could be before I showed it to her. So it wasn't until I actually signed with an agent. And then I was like, okay, now I feel like this is okay. And I
understand that, because people have asked me that before. And I'm like, I'm not inclined to share my pages outside of like maybe some sort of writer's group or workshop.
Yeah.
Until I feel like I've taken them as far as I can take them in a certain sense. Like, you show them to your agent. That seems like a safe first reader. If they think it doesn't suck,
right,
then it might be like semi-safe,
right?
And even then, it's like, who knows,
right? Exactly. Yeah.
So again, I know that your life has been upended by a new child and the move and everything, but just with regard to Cape May and this fever dream that you were in when this draft shot out of you in 2 months. What did your schedule look like? Like, you were teaching writing workshops.
Yeah.
So you're teaching in Boston, but like, how did you work before everything changed?
Sure. So I was teaching, but my primary job was I was the head instructor at an organization called Grub Street in Boston.
Yeah.
Steve Allman teaches there, among many other people. But it's an amazing organization. But I was in charge of hiring and, managing the instructors there, and supporting them. And it was a part-time job. So, I didn't have to be in the office until 1. So it'd be 1 to 6 is when I worked there, Monday through Friday. And so I would get up really early, in the morning. At that time, I would get up at like 5 and go for a run, and then, to wake myself up and write anywhere from 6 to 7 until about 11 o'clock or so, and then shower, have lunch, and go to work. So I had a ton of time. I mean, I have always built my professional life in a way that I could do the writing, to build it around the writing. And so before that job, I'd actually left my a previous job to do freelance copy editing and teaching. And then the opportunity with Grub Street came along. Of course, I snatched it up because then it'd be more stability and I wouldn't have to sort of hustle for a paycheck. So that was my schedule.
That's a great job for a writer, especially like a childless writer, and you just you control your time. But that's like it's like a nice like symbiosis between writer stuff and making some dough.
Definitely, it was really great. I mean, for a time there, it was really working well together. I mean, I remember, even just the commute in was great because I'd have been working all morning and then I would walk 20-minute walk to the T and get on the train and, 30 minutes into the city, and all that time I'm churning through what I had been working on in the morning. It's like, that's part of what, the feeling of bereavement I'm feeling right now is that I don't have a problem I'm constantly turning around in my head. Like, I love that feeling of actively working on a novel,
especially one that you really like.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, wow, this is like a fun place to be.
Yeah. So those days were just great. So I mean, right before we learned that we were going to have a baby, actually, I left the Grub Street job, because it was getting a little bit too time consuming. The responsibilities were growing on it. And so I left the job, to do freelance again. My wife, luckily had a really good job at the time, that was able to sort of support us for the interim where I could finish this novel, because I was really determined at that point, to finish the novel, because I knew we were trying to have a baby. And then, thank God, I had that freedom, because when we realized, we were going to have one, I had the freedom to just sort of dedicate everything to it. And so that's what I did. I don't know what I would have done, if things hadn't worked out the way they would. I mean, I would just, I don't know.
It takes a little luck, and you have to have lucky circumstances to have the time to write.
Yeah,
I mean, just the ability to sit down with any degree of regularity and work imaginatively is an enormous privilege.
It really is,
which is easy to lose sight of when you're like pissed off at your book and
exactly
struggling.
Right, yeah.
So you get this. So this draft comes out of you in 2 months, and then you had to revise for
about 2 to 3 years.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I tell the story about like, it just came out like nothing. No, I mean, I really suffered over the revision.
And I think I read somewhere that you messed with point of view. Is that right? That was
did.
Like the big fix or a big change?
It was one of, a few, but maybe the biggest change, I guess, would have been the point of view, because the previous novel I'd been working in first person point of view. And so most of the first draft of Cape May was in the first person. And I quickly realized afterwards that was never going to work. Like, it was too intimate for first person. It needed to be third person, which was the more intimate point of view. So I rewrote it.
How so?
In first person, there's always this little voice that's saying, "Why are you telling me this? What's your agenda here? Why are you telling me this story?" And in the kind of story I was telling with Cape May, it's so intimate that question quickly becomes like, ooh, I mean, like, really, why are you telling me this? Like, TMI, back off. Like, I don't want to hear about that, I think I always say I'm paraphrasing Jennifer Haig when I say this. I think it's true. With third person, you can show what people are doing when they don't think anyone's watching. And that was important for this novel.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a novel of bad behavior and awkward
and farts. And like, and like I am constipated, it's that kind of novel, and sex is kind of gross, and
and just
and
weird.
It's a little messy and it's weird. Yeah. So
you get through all this, and then the baby's coming, and then you go try to find an agent. I would imagine with your network, grad school, Grub Street, you at least had some options. So what was that process like? Did you just send it in and somebody took it, or?
I did. I'm so uncomfortable talking about this stuff because I've really struggled for years and years and years, but when it happened, it all happened like a fairy tale, so I just want to preface this by saying none of this is what I expected and none of this is usual, and now I'm back to normal because I feel like I'm at loose ends with my work and I have no idea what I'm doing anymore, so I'm back to my comfort zone. But when so there was an agent, Catherine Fawcett, who was a good friend of mine, Laura Vandenberg's agent, and Benjamin Percy's agent, and I had met her several times before at Grub Street and through Breadloaf Writers Conference. And she's just a delightful, wonderful, warm, supportive human being, and also a really good agent, as I could see from the example of my friends. And so she was always kind of my dream agent. And so when the baby fog kind of died down a bit, enough for me to make a few edits on the book, I polished it up and sent it just to her. And Laura, was able to send her an email, say, hey, keep a lookout for, Chip's going to send you a book. So, I kind of got that advantage. But yeah, she wrote back a week or so later and said, I'm so glad, just a few days later, I think. She said, I'm so happy you sent me this book. My inbox is really, really, loaded, as you can tell. So just give me, be patient. And I said, of course, don't worry about it. An hour later, she said, I read the first 50 pages and I can't stop. Can you please send the rest of the book? And so I sent her the rest of the book. And like a couple of days later, she said, let's do this, and we worked together a little bit on some edits. We sent it out, and it sold within 24 hours after that.
Wow. At auction or?
A preempt, actually.
Wow.
We sent it out to 15 editors and Celadon, which is this new imprint of Macmillan. I was their first purchase, in fact, and they made a preemptive offer on it. So
good for you.
It's just like, what?
Where were you when you got the news?
I was in a dark room at home with our baby, and Katie was out somewhere at a doctor's appointment or something, and the baby was napping, and I was just praying that she would stay napping while my agent and I discussed this.
Phone rang.
Yeah, the phone rang. Yeah.
I always say, like, good news comes via phone, bad news comes via email.
Right. Yeah. And so I had hours to decide, whether we take this or not. And I remember when, Katie came home and we discussed it, and, Catherine and I were texting about it, and I said, let's do this. And suddenly my life was changed.
That's so great.
It's just like it's just not how I expected this to go. I mean, I thought this novel, it's just a little tender novel of feelings. I certainly didn't think of it as a beach read, which is, of course, how they're going to market it. And that's what they saw. They saw, oh yeah, we can sell this. But that's not what I was thinking at all. I would have been happy with a small press. Ecstatic.
You're like, this is a tone poem.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I was in a complete state of shock and continue to be, I think.
And
now.
then foreign rights sold too?
Foreign rights sold. We've sold in 6 or 7 languages now.
Have you added that to your bio?
I should.
His work has been translated into 7 languages.
Yeah, I should. No, it's not. Yeah.
This podcast has been translated into 44 languages.
Right. Those editions are starting to come in, and it's really exciting. Those are really, the German and French and Danish editions have come in, and it's just so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah. And you get have them on your shelf, like a little, you got to.
Yeah. And the UK and Australia, New Zealand editions are all, it's all kind of the same publisher, but different formats, or different covers. And that's been really, really exciting.
Do you, are you going to do any kind of foreign tour, or have you done?
No, there's no plan for one anyway. I haven't heard anything about it. And I really haven't done, my publishers put all their money into advertising and marketing, and so they're not sending me on a tour. I've done a few dates here in LA, and I did a bookstore, and I did just this past weekend at Newtonville Books in Boston, which is just, I adore that store, and so I did an event there, which was great. But
yeah, it's like hometown.
Totally,
like Return of the Conquering Hero.
It felt like a homecoming. Yeah, like I rode in on a horse. I was holding a sword. It was awesome.
There should be more authors riding to their first, their like celebratory book launch on a horse.
Right.
And I think too, when it comes to you talking about your publisher not doing a big tour, I think about this a lot, and I guess maybe there's just no easy answer. Otherwise, somebody would be doing it. But I get sent a ton of books. I get a million emails, and it's always the same. It's a template, like a form letter, basically.
Yeah.
Tucked inside of a galley or a finished book, just sent to my door. Not like Dear Brad, nothing personal. Maybe even like a printed signature. It's not even, it's just so impersonal. And I'm like, is this really the best that can be done? And for my show, since I do it almost entirely in person, I'm always looking at the one sheet, like, well, what's the tour? Where's the tour dates?
Yeah.
Are people coming to LA? Because there's nothing to talk about if they're not going to be here. I can't have them on the show unless they come to town. And so you're not even letting me know.
Yeah.
So they haven't even thought it through. They're just like mass mailing. And I'm like,
like, I know that these houses have streamlined and, you know, money is tight and they can't, but like, there's got to be a better way. And when it comes to publicizing a book or marketing a book, like, what's the most effective expenditure of money? Is it on a tour? Is it on print advertisement in the New Yorker or the New York Times Book Review?
Right.
I should have somebody, like a marketing person on the show. I'd be curious.
I would love to tune into that episode.
I think a lot of writers would. Maybe I'll try to do that. I've got to figure out who it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. You know, and I never thought about this stuff. I never thought about publishing or marketing or publicity. Totally never thought I would have to think about that. And I thought if I did ever have to think about it, I would have plenty of time to learn and grow and all that. Instead, that's just not what happened. Suddenly I had to start thinking about it, and I'm totally ill-equipped to do this. I realize I can't brag. I hate it. I feel like even just talking about the process of having the book, how the book was sold and all that stuff, I feel like a jerk. You know, I feel like I can just hear younger me saying like, "Ooh, you're so cool." You know,
you're like the orphan that got adopted. Everyone else is at the orphanage like, "Fuck you."
Yeah,
dude.
I know, and but yeah, so I don't even know how to be. I don't know how to. You know, I just try to be myself as much as authentically as I can. You know, but I don't know how any of this works.
Well, I think most authors feel that way. There's a lot of mystery to the process and how these decisions get made, and I don't think even the people who are making the decisions would probably tell you like, yeah, you know. I used to think about this with regard to film reviews, but it applies to so many. I mean, it can apply in so many different contexts. But I was always like, what kind of mood was the person in? I feel like they should write that into the review.
Right, you're right.
Like, I had a fight with my significant other that morning. Yeah. I felt like a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
I got 3 hours of sleep. You know, I spilled my coffee, and then I went to the screening. Just so that people have a sense.
Exactly. Like, there should be a color code or something.
Yeah.
Like,
you were predisposed to hate this, or you were, or you know, vice versa. Yeah. This was like the best day of your life, and then you were just in a good mood and felt charitable. So you were in the mood. You know, you were kind of like primed to say yes. But ultimately, people have to make calls, and so much of it has to do with timing. You know, right book, right time, right editor.
Exactly. Right.
And then there is something to be said about just like quality.
Of course.
Like some books and some works of art, I do feel are just like undeniable.
Yeah. Certainly.
Or they meet their moment. Like we're in a weird cultural moment right now. I don't know. I wouldn't even dare to define it, but it's got something to do with digital media and social media and identity. I feel like books and works of art that speak to what, like where the wider culture is, it seems like.
Certainly.
More so than others. But, you know, it's always changing. As soon as I say that, it was probably on to the next.
You can't write to that, obviously, or you'll just be chasing your tail.
But some artists, like, I think, you know, like you say, you can't write to it, but some artists were doing it when that moment hit, and then you see that it's, you know, it's a fit.
No, that's interesting. I wrote my book before the Me Too moment, you know, it came out right after my book sold, you know, and I remember thinking, oh, this will be interesting, you know, to see how, if that affects reception or anything like that, you know, just because here's yet another novel about, you know, from a white male author about male sexuality, you know, is that exactly what we don't need right now, you know? And I was and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll let other people decide if that's what we need or not, you know? I wrote it. I love this book. I adore, you know, you mentioned earlier about, you know, just quality, you know, I mean, I kind of just had a sense to myself that this book was, for me, I loved it. It was my little baby. And the editor, you know, Deb Futter at Celadon Books, absolutely loved it. And she and that whole team has been incredibly supportive, you know, so I've, you know, I talk about feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, and it's true, I don't. But I do feel like they have my back in a great way, and they've been incredibly supportive and really, really, really smart. And they've helped me navigate, you know, some. You know, I remember in one of the editorial discussions we had, you know, my editor saying, you know, I remember her saying like, there are, I think, 5 or 6 cunts in this novel. And she's like, can we sort of dial it back? I sort of want to look back, you know, and I was like, yo, let me think about that, you know, and I'm like, oh, we've got it down to 3 cunts now. And I think I will stand by every one of those. She's like, good. I just want to make sure, you know, we're putting our best foot forward. But anyway, rambling answer, but they've been very supportive, and this has been an interesting time. And yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think you hit some points that I think like, like any author hopes to hit. Like, one, you really love your book.
Yeah.
Like, you loved it when you were writing it. You feel good about it. And now it's out in the world, and it's exciting. You know, there's no like ambivalence. And then you have an agent who you're enthusiastic about and who gets your work and who's good.
Yeah.
And you have, you know, a publisher and an editor who are the same. You know, that's
good.
it. That's
what
you want.
Yeah, that's what you want. It's what you want.
And then what about film stuff? Like this book, I feel like this book has some film potential. I could see where it could work.
I think so.
Is that happening? Are you out there floating it around? And
you know, there's at Curtis Brown, where the agency where Catherine's at. There's a Hollywood agent who loves the book, I think, and is excited about it. And so, you know, right when it sold, she you know, sent it out all over the place, and we got a lot of interest. And I think I'm an unknown debut author, so no one is going to sort of take that yet, you know, to bet on it yet. So it's more of a wait and see. But yeah, there have been some just a little bit of interest here and there. I've got an acquaintance who's a novelist, and he is really interested in writing the screenplay for it. If we, you know, get any, if it sells, and if that's an option, if there's some flexibility on who does that, and he's been hustling.
it's like packaging, though. You got to get like a certain star attached and a director.
Right.
You know,
I mean, I think I feel like the rights could be sold, but then that doesn't mean anything's going to happen for, you know, I mean, I talk like I know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't know how this stuff, but this is what I've been told.
You've been in LA a year. You have this
master. Right. Yeah. I just want to put on sunglasses and ride in convertibles. I think that's what it is, and talking to yourself a lot, but, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think there's some potential. It's just, again, talk about time, needing things to like break your way, and timing and unpredictability. It's just such a crapshoot.
Right. It would be so cool, but that's like a cherry on top of everything. You know, I mean, I would love it to happen. Like, and I would not want to have anything to do with it.
I was going to say, you wouldn't want to write the screenplay.
Absolutely not. No, I don't know how to write screenplays, and I feel like it's a totally different art form. And what I love is how people interpret it differently. I mean, even just the audiobook, like, the guy reads it totally differently than I read those lines, you know. I think that's really cool, you know. So I think the coolest thing about if it were ever made into a film would be to see how someone else would interpret it.
Yeah. Well, or mangle it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, I mean, I talk now like, you know, like I wouldn't mind, but no, I mean, I'm sure I do have strong opinions. I'm sure I just don't know what they are yet.
And Justin Bieber in the starring role.
Right.
Yeah. So what about your upbringing? Like you said Georgia, you said Texas, and like the Houston area.
Yeah.
But then you also talked about this sort of abandoned attempt at a novel that drew on family history that was dark and violent. So there's got to be some stories there. Like, what are you referring to?
It comes from so my family my family's in middle of Georgia. Macon, Georgia is the town. That's where I was born. And they just go back many generations. On my dad's side, before the Revolution. On my mother's side, right after the Civil War. German immigrants. So they lived in rural Georgia. The story I was trying to make into a novel was something that happened to my great grandfather and my grandfather, which is that they owned a land. They were farmers in the time of tenant farming, and so they had some black tenants that were living on their land. And this is true of, you know, they had neighboring farms, landowners. You know, this is just the region they lived in. The story, as told by that came down to me from my mother's side of the family, is that my great grandfather's neighbors were very mean. I don't know what that means. They were bad people. You know, that's all I know. And they treated their tenants terribly, and those tenants wanted to escape, and so they ran to my grandfather and said, "Help us get out of here. Can you help us?" And he did. He helped them get away. I don't know how that happened, but he did. That other tenant came and faced off with him and said, you know, "I know what you did," and pulled a gun on him, and my great-grandfather shot him and killed him.
Whoa.
My grandfather, who was a child at the time, witnessed it and saw it and always said...
Wait, so your grandfather, you said?
Witnessed his father, my great-grandfather, shoot and kill this other
So he just had landowner. Like a pistol on him?
The guy, as the story was told, came to came to my great grandfather's house and said, "I'm going to kill you. I know what you did, you son of a bitch. Come on out." And he comes out, with a gun, of course, because this other guy's brandishing a gun, and says, and he kills him. And my grandfather says he can remember. He died many, many years ago, but said he could remember the man's chest caving in. That was the image that stuck with him, because it was a shotgun, and so all the shot went into his chest, and he caved in, and he went back. He flew back and landed on his back. And my great grandfather was arrested, and there was a trial, and he was ultimately acquitted of the murder. And after that, he went on to become a justice of the peace.
What does that even mean?
He was like I think a kind of like police officer, essentially, is what he was. I think when we moved to Macon, he was a police officer and also sold Watkins products door to door. I'm probably mangling all the details. My mom will never listen to this anyway, so I don't care. It's fine.
You'd be surprised.
And I haven't thought about this material in a long time too, so I may be getting some of those details wrong.
But a heavy story.
But it was a heavy story, and it involves what I thought that was very interesting about it was that it, as my family would tell the story, it would be like, this is not a story that we liked to tell because it was a one white landowner killing another person over mistreatment of the black tenants. And we don't want to be perceived as being inward lovers. And I remember thinking, God, that's fascinating. So many things going on in that story, and so many levels that I haven't seen, in other stories. But now, that's the story as told to me. I did a little research, and I couldn't find many of those. I found the news stories where my great grandfather killed another guy.
How do you find that?
I had a librarian friend. I did a lot of searching, actually.
Like microfiche, or like, what is it?
I guess so. I searched for a long time, emailing court records people in those counties, and was getting nowhere. I tried to look in the Macon Telegraph's archives. I couldn't find anything. A couple of years later, a librarian friend of mine, when I had a fellowship up to the Vermont Studio Center where I was working on this, and a librarian friend of mine just dug, and using her magical powers was able to find a few news stories that's my great grandfather. That's my
pictures.
There were no pictures.
Oh, okay, but just the story was told.
But there were the names and the counties and all the stuff. And in that news story, it was something. It had nothing to do with tenants. It was for some reason never specified. This other landowner wanted to had been threatening my great grandfather, and the stories I read, it seemed a lot more premeditated. My great grandfather told my grandfather to wait by the well, and he went with a pistol and killed the man, and then put the pistol in the man's hand, according to a witness. And then he went to trial and was acquitted. But point being, it made him not look great, and it had nothing to do. The story said nothing to do about tenants, and maybe that was purposeful. I don't know. But the truth, obviously, is much more complicated than whatever story narrative came down from my family.
As it tends to be.
Of course.
And generational, yeah. I mean, I was as you're talking, I'm thinking about how precious little I know about my ancestry. Mm-hmm. My folks are from Louisiana, and I knew my grandparents, and I have a lot of aunts and uncles and everything, but beyond my grandparents, I never knew my great-grandparents. I just know very little.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Have you ever tried to look into...
No, and I'm paranoid about these 23andMe, like these genetic things.
Yeah,
because I'm
too.
like, I don't want my DNA or whatever.
I know.
I don't want my. I want that in like some database somewhere.
Yeah, I feel the same. Yeah,
the same. I don't know how to get to it. I mean, at some point, maybe there'll be a service that isn't so Orwellian or something.
Right. Yeah, I don't. I think this is true of a lot of. I mean, I don't know. Generalizing, but of Southern families, Southern people anyway, we think about history a lot. History is, that's so. My family talked about it a lot, talked about where we'd come from and the old times
I feel guilt.
And stuff.
I feel a sense of like carried guilt, and like I don't know the degree to which I should, because I was raised in Milwaukee, removed, and like I have nothing to do with the dark parts of the the Southern past.
but I witnessed some ugly things growing up. You know, comments made by uncles or aunts or
God, yeah,
you know, grandparents, where you're just like, well, that's not right.
Yeah,
and, you know, you're trying to like parse that with like your love for them, and it's complicated and weird. And but I think even beyond guilt, I do have a sense of like generational responsibility to kind of like make it right in some small way.
Sure.
And interestingly, I don't know if I've talked about this on this show before, but yeah, I've talked about psychedelics ad nauseum on this show. Like I read Michael Pollan's book, like very much like in the pop mode, but also like have been genuinely confused about them for years because I sort of like experimented when I was in college, like pretty stupidly. And then after all these years went by, I was sort of like, I kind of want to do it again to like try to get it right. I missed something vital. And then you're reading these books and you're like, I definitely feel like I need to like reassess this. So I did. And it was like, it's a very intense experience.
Wow.
And at the height of it or whatever, when I was like really into the, you know, the trance, I kept seeing over and over again images of African American women and children, but I was looking down and they were like in holes.
Oh fuck.
And it sounds really dark and awful. Like the trip was fine. Like I sort of like anticipated that there's always going to be weird stuff when you do that, you know? So I don't know. Like I was able to sort of hold it together. I wasn't freaking out or anything, but I was just sort of like curious more than anything. And then I felt a sense of embodiment where I was like, whew, like all of a sudden I was like feeling like I was them. It's like this really powerful, deep sense of connection. I don't know if it was past lives. Like I don't know how to analyze it. Like was I experiencing past lives, or was I somehow like seeing the suffering wrought by prejudice and racism that maybe is carried? I have no idea. You know, but it was just so odd. I wasn't thinking about that sort of thing going into it.
Yeah.
And then you want to hear the funny part?
Sure.
It was in here. I was wearing a sleep mask. I followed this entire protocol.
It's great.
Yeah. I had music playing, like the whole thing. I had candles, you know.
Oh, man.
And I just lay on this couch right here for like 6 hours. And I took a lot, which is what you're supposed to do. So I was really, you know, I was on a ride. And at some point, I just started crying. Like I've cried probably cumulatively, like in an intense way, maybe 20 minutes in my entire adult life.
Oh, man.
I mean, like, you know, I've shed tears,
yeah.
but like I'm just not a sobber.
Sure.
I was sobbing.
Yeah.
And like I didn't realize it until suddenly I reached under my sleep mask. I was like, oh my God. And then at some point I was hugging a black woman. And I could like, it was like her hair, I could feel it. And like I could smell like the shampoo, you know what I'm saying? And I was crying and I was like, and she pulled away. It was Oprah. I shit you not. And when I say it was Oprah, like it was her.
Okay.
And she was like, it's okay. And that was the point at which I started laughing and like realized that I was laughing. And I think like it was a moment when I sort of like regained a foothold in consciousness. It's fucking weird.
Oh, my God.
These experiences are weird.
There's a lot to unpack there. I have absolutely no idea where to begin.
What does this mean?
That's amazing.
Can we unpack my weird psyche? But
oh, my God. Like, I did some LSD in high school and in my first year of college and had a rough one that I was like, I am never doing this again. And I was clearly not doing it right. But
it's not for the faint of heart.
No.
And you know, it's not to be taken lightly. But I did my homework. I don't know.
Well, wow.
Maybe I just had like I got lucky. It could have gone worse, but I thought about it for a long time.
Wow.
And Oprah showed up.
Man.
And it was just so fucking weird, man. It was because like it sounds really silly, and I totally get it. But like when it was happening, I was just like, what the fuck, you know? Like, and it was just like this bizarro world. So
that's interesting.
Anyway, back to you in Georgia and Texas. Yeah. So you have this story, you know, from your great grandfather that sort of carried through the generations. It doesn't sound like you stayed in Georgia very long after you were born. So then you moved to Texas pretty shortly thereafter.
Yeah, when I was 3, we moved out to Houston, Texas. But Georgia looms large with me because I spent my summers and Christmases there. Like I would spend a month and a half, 2 months in Georgia every summer.
It's hot.
It's hot. Yeah, it's very hot. But I loved it. I mean, I loved it so much. And so I loved my family there, and it always had this, since it was separated from my normal school life, it always had this sort of gauzy glow to it, you know.
You're like hunting pheasants and stuff? What are you doing?
No, I mean, you're hanging out. I'm hanging out on porches and, you know, looking at lightning bugs, you know, but running through the woods and, you know, and also going to museums and traveling and going fishing, a lot of fishing. You know, we, go up to the Smoky Mountains and, you know, it's just wonderful. I mean, I had fabulous, an aunt Jackie, who was my mother's, sister, who never married and didn't have children, and so she adored my brother and me. And
she's like the cool aunt.
She's great, yeah. She's amazing, and so I did a lot of things with her, and I stayed with my grandmother on my father's side, and yeah, just great memories from it. So my fictional eye often turned toward that, you know, from the time I was a teenager trying to write stories. You know, I would turn to that, and it always as a adult writer trying to find the good stuff, you know, having dutifully read Flannery O'Connor and Carson McCullers and, and the like, and Faulkner, trying to find, okay, what's my angle on this stuff, you know? And that's why I really think, I mean, the story that, you know, that I told, you know, and probably mangled, that comes from my family's past, it seemed like an interesting gift, you know, as a writer.
Sure, yeah.
But ultimately, you know, I realize now that it has nothing to do with me. Honestly, I have no connection to that. What the hell? You know, it's in my family's past, but I never knew those people. I knew my grandfather. I have no connection to those tenants. I have nothing to say about them, really. From an intellectual standpoint, it's interesting to me. But I grew up in the Woodlands, Texas, in my family was always lower middle class. We were not well off by any stretch of the imagination, but we had a great deal of privilege living in this nice neighborhood in Houston. I went to a nice school district. The most urgent dramas of my life began to happen in my teenage years when I lost my virginity and started having sex for the first time. And I was I was in a heavy metal band, and so I thought I was awesome, you know, and I had girlfriends, and I, you know, flaunted it on stage, you know, and
what would you be the singer?
I was the lead singer and songwriter, man.
What was your band called?
Infinite Eruption, with 2 R's, Eruption, you know.
Yeah.
We were like a goth metal sort of. I had an operatic voice when I sang, kind of a Queensryche kind of feel to it. This was in the early 90s. Songs,
Ladies Can't Resist, and operatic.
Oh no, I had hair metal. Like, you know, hair down to the, you know, down to the middle of my back, you know, and just, God, man, I was this shit, you know. I thought so. I wrote, my lyrics were poetry, obviously, you know.
What were some of your song titles?
Fly to the Burning Stallion was our great like power ballad. Son of Fire. Morning Sun, but it was morning spelled as in sad morning.
Yeah.
Just, you know, it was, I mean, yeah, it was so great. And so we played clubs in Houston, you know, starting when we were 14 years old till like 17, 18, you know, we played clubs, man. And
it's like Bill Hicks. He was like, Bill Hicks was doing comedy in clubs when he was like 15.
Yeah.
He's a Houston boy.
Really?
Yeah. I forget. He might have lived in Woodland, you said? That rings a bell.
The Woodlands.
That's the name of the town or the neighborhood?
I mean, it's the town. It was a master plan community. It started in 1977 or 78. So, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so that was my life. Okay. You know, it wasn't sharecropping, you know, in Jim Crow South. You know, Now I'm not saying, I don't mean to say, of course, you can't access. I mean, that's the whole thing about fiction is an empathic art form. You're supposed to, you know, you can. I think you're free to enter any life, you know, if you can, you know, and write about it. It's totally.
Maybe I'm supposed to write a book about Oprah.
Maybe this is your subconscious is speaking to you.
My creative license is very large.
Right. But for me, ultimately, I think that's why I couldn't access it. I mean, those weren't the urgent dramas of my life. And so with Cape May, I'm, you know, was tapping into stuff that I knew a little bit more about, you know.
Wow. And so then where'd you go to college?
I went to the University of Texas in Austin.
Oh, you did? Okay. Because you said then you went to New York after college.
Yeah.
What'd you study at Texas?
In journalism.
So you were thinking writer.
All around. Yeah. From the beginning. I always wanted to be a writer. I never expected to like make it as I didn't know how you would make it as a living, you know. I knew nothing about how to become a writer, including, but when I went to college, I thought like, journalism, that's a good way. I want to write novels. Let's start with journalism, you know, and so it wasn't until really, after I moved to New York, even then I was so naive. I graduated from college and I thought, okay, I still want to be a writer. Well, all the publishers are in New York. I'm going to move to New York, which looking back is a kind of a naive thing to do.
But not bad instincts.
I guess not. A lot of people do it for probably the same reason, I guess.
I guess like the question I would pose to you is like, cause I didn't do that. And I always have some regret that I didn't live in New York when I was young. Wish I would have gone there for like a couple of years in my 20s.
Yeah.
Like, cause that's when you should do it. When you're just like, willing to live in a shoebox and, just go have fun. But
yeah, it's great.
Did you, from the experience, get access that you otherwise would not have had that proved valuable when it comes to like writing, or was the exposure to the literary industry in some way like, irreplaceable to you in terms of your development or your professional arc?
It was not. No, it had to do more with time, and moving to New York was really exciting. But I also didn't really know anybody, and I'm shy, and I didn't get to know anybody. So the 5 years that I lived there,
what happened to Infinite Eruption? You couldn't.
That was long. No, I should.
You couldn't be like, by the way, I'm the lead singer in Infinite Eruption. I don't know if you've heard of us.
Yeah. Well, funny you should say that. I was still writing songs at that time. The one person I did know was my really close friend of mine, Ken. We used to write songs together. And right when we moved to New York, I moved up and he moved 5 months later. So we got a place together. We joined this songwriting group in Greenwich Village. And it was this little folk songwriting group that had been going on since the 70s. And it included, we went there the first night. We heard that like Suzanne Vega was a part of this group, and in our first night we went there, and sure enough, there she was. And this guy, Jack,
she goes like, thanks Suzanne for putting that in my head.
Yeah. Well, turns out she's an awesome person and really brilliant and an amazing songwriter. She will not remember who I am, of course, if she ever hears this. But for a few years there, we were a part of this little songwriting group, and it was basically a songwriting workshop. It's a tiny, tiny little living room. You'd bring a song in a week. You'd pass around a guitar, and you'd bring the lyrics in, and you'd play your song, and then they would workshop the song the same way you'd.
So like everyone would do an iteration, or what would it be? Like people.
No. You would bring your song in. I would play my song, and then the group would discuss it.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
just like a workshop, and then, and so that first night we came and Ken and I both had songs and we played it, and there we are being workshopped by Suzanne Vega, and the guy, Jack Hardy, is the guy who led the workshop. I'm getting way off topic here, but
no, it's great. You're like, no, it's MOURN.
That's right. That's right. You're not getting it. This has nothing to do with the actual morning. Okay. But I say all that, just, that has actually nothing to do with my like writing life, really. It was just, that was a kind of a sideline thing I was doing. Aside from Ken and aside from like my coworkers, I worked at a life insurance company. So I didn't have to worry about money too much, and I could write in the evenings. I knew no one. And so all I did on the weekends, I had never had weekend plans. I would just, when I first got to New York, I was working on this, like looking back on it now, it's so dumb, but it was this like sci-fi epic novel that I thought was really cool. I realized it was complete crap, and I threw it away.
What was it called?
It had no title.
Oh,
it had no title. And something hit me that I just didn't know what I was doing. I had no real grounding in literature. I wanted to be a writer, but I had no idea what that meant, what it entailed, and who I was as a reader even. And so I remember I bought the Norton Anthology of American Literature, Volume 2, that starts in the, from the modern era, and just opened it and started reading, and the authors that would speak to me, I'd go out and get those books. And for 5 years, let's say three to 4 years, after I dumped my sci-fi epic novel, I did nothing but read and write.
That sounds smart.
And that's all I did. And I still I knew enough to apply to MFA programs. I took a few workshops at the New School in New York, where to get a sort of sense of how I would feel about workshops, and to get a sense of like how the stuff I was writing, how it would, go. And I got some encouragement, a lot of encouragement actually. And so I applied to grad schools, and that's really when my, education began. I was 28 years old when I started at Emerson.
Okay. And which authors spoke to you out of that anthology?
Flannery O'Connor, of course, was one of the ones. She lived most of her life about 30 minutes from where I was born. And her voice, was so familiar to me that really struck me. Authors that I would not consider are in any way sort of influential to me now, but I got way off into like Garcia Marquez and Jose Saramago. I read Moby Dick for the first time, and it's still my happy place book. I reread it like every few years.
Why?
I just worship that freaking weird ass book. It's like the most bonkers book ever. I especially love the cetology chapters. I love that there are like not one, but like 3 chapters on pictorial representations of whales, so I love that. I don't know. I just read all the classics, I think, Raymond Carver I first read in that time. It's so cliche to say that, but he also, I mean, I think any sort of like writer of my generation and, literary writer wanting to write short stories and literary novels, there's a time when they come male, I should say, to add to all of that, comes across Raymond Carver and gets your mind blown by Cathedral and A Small Good Thing.
But I think it makes it seem like it's doable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Right.
Because it's like, it's so, the language is so spare and, simple and direct, and it tricks you into thinking it's easy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so you want to copy it. Yeah. But it wasn't until I think grad school that I really found the authors that, that truly changed my life, I think, and are the ones that are sort of remain with me all these years later. And it was in grad school that I found Alice Monroe, for example, and Marilyn Robinson, who are 2 of my big heroes. And many others beside. But
why, what about those 2?
I loved Alice Monroe for her story structures, the narratives, the way she structured her stories blew my mind. Particularly the story, I think of my favorite example is A Small Good Thing, that's Raymond Carver, Friend of My Youth, sorry, where she, she's telling, you begin by getting a story about, her mother, the character, the narrator's mother's life. You think you're getting a kind of engrossing story about that. And then the story in the middle turns on a dime, and it's about something else. It's about the narrator's relationship to her mother. And the narrator says, that's the way my mother would tell it. I'm going to retell it this way. And then by the end, there are a couple other twists and turns. She has this amazing ability to like sink you into a narrative and then like turn the whole world around. And you didn't see it coming. The way she plays with perspective and point of view, and also the plainness of her language. It's unadorned. There are no jazz hands in her language, and I love that. I love that it's just like the stuff that's good. It's the precise. She's so precise and unadorned, and the fireworks are in what she does with stories. And it hit me that she was like, not not like other writers that I'd read who were sort of quote unquote like experimental, who I still love. Alice Monroe was like the most experimental writer I'd ever seen. I'd never seen anyone do the things she did with language or with stories,
And what about Marilyn?
It was just that voice, the mood. Her sentences are beautiful. Housekeeping is one of those books that I reread every couple of years as well. I absolutely worship that book. It never gets old to me. The sentences are beautiful. She writes the most beautiful sentences I've ever seen.
Well, there you go.
To me. And I think she just kind of infects my style too. I kind of I wish I could just write like her. If Marilyn Robinson wrote like super sexually explicit stuff, like in that planet.
Wait till she publishes her diaries.
Yeah, right. I'm so sure. But anyway, yeah.
Wow.
But I read really widely. I mean, that's the stuff that's influenced me as a writer, but I don't read like I write. I'm reading a lot of science right now. I'm reading a lot of science books. That's what I'm obsessed with right now.
You got to go where where you want to go.
Yeah.
I feel like if you force yourself to read what you think you're supposed to be reading, it's a bad formula.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you always have your nose in a book. Like you read a lot. Every day you make time.
Try. I mean, life is different now with childcare and everything else. I'm a slow reader, a very slow reader, and I need to concentrate. So I'm not like a book a week reader, like almost everyone else I know who's a successful writer. I take my time with books, and I always have. Wow. And so I need a lot of time, and I don't have a ton of alone time now these days.
No, you can't read a book a week with a shrieking child like in your ear.
I can't. How
What's your problem?
Do you do it? You have 2 children.
No, I told you when you got here, I was like reading in preparation for more interviews that I've got to do, and I'm listening to an audiobook at 2 times speed while I'm walking my dog.
Right. Okay.
That's how and I'm just like, I'm insane. I'm like trying to follow this person jabbering in my ear.
Yeah.
It's like 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. I'm just like, what am I doing with my life?
God. Yeah, man. I was part way through the 3rd volume of Proust's, like, with the new translations that are coming out now, when Audrey arrived in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm just never going to get back there again. I don't know when I'm ever going to get back to a place where
it'll settle. I mean, how old is she? 2?
She'll be 2 in August.
Yeah, I mean, once she gets going, she'll start school soon this year, right? She starts school this summer.
She's in like kind of like a preschooly school 2 days a week. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, that'll expand and then it'll start to get a little bit saner.
Okay.
But
thanks.
not too much.
Yeah.
And then you got to go to like birthday parties on the weekend.
Right.
Play dates.
God, man. I want to like pick your brain. I need advice.
You need Klonopin is what you need. So then you go to, what was it, Emerson?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where, like, I feel like that's the case for a lot of people, because by the time you get to where you want to do an MFA, like, you're ready to focus is what you really are.
Yeah.
You want to be serious about it.
Right.
And to be in a graduate program with other people who are of a similar mind is great.
Right.
You have a community. You get to kind of be in it.
Right.
And did you teach while you were there, or no?
I didn't. No,
Okay.
no. I taught after. I worked on the literary journal, Redivider, while I was at Emerson.
And Elisa Gabbert, was she a classmate of yours?
She was never. I mean, we were in the same cohort. She was a year or 2 ahead of me. And she was a poet, and I was in the fiction program. But we were all kind of in the same orbit. I was very lucky. I mean, Emerson's a good school, but I was really lucky to arrive at Emerson with an incredibly good cohort. Elisa Gabbert was there. Laura Vandenberg was there. James Scott was there. Cam Terwilliger was there. Kathleen Rooney was there. There was an amazing amount of, like, I didn't know much about poetry, but there was an incredibly good crop of poets there. Chris Tonelli is another. And so we just had this enormously huge, talented, intimidatingly talented cohort. Not just my year, but the years ahead and behind. And they all, for a long time, we all just stayed there in Boston, in Somerville or Jamaica Plain and, or Cambridge. And that's been my life for most of the past 14 years. The people that I met, Emerson then kind of bled into Grub Street, which was like right next door to Emerson was Grub Street. So you had the grad school, and then you had this nonprofit creative writing center that itself was just full of these amazing writers. And it was just kind of, I lucked out on just that community. So I always had that support and just really good people to sort of, we were all really supported each other, but also really wanted to impress each other, and we used to, there was this dive bar, the Tam, we used to go to every night. I mean, I basically met my wife, was
she in the program too? Or?
She was in the program. She was in nonfiction.
Got it.
I mean, just lots of parties and, hanging out, and it was an amazing time. And really, I mean, until Audrey came, that's kind of, I was able to sort of be a dissolute, youth and then adult until 41 years old. And then
former lead singer of Infinite Eruption.
Exactly, man. And just let the party keep going. No, I'm a dad. So
yeah. Well, it's good though, man. It has its own rewards.
No, it's actually wonderful. It's wonderful.
And the adjustment to LA, because it feels like it's very different. I mean, it must have been like a big shock to your system to suddenly be in El Segundo. And
for real,
winters, it's just the same weather every day.
Right. Well, I'm starting to notice a different, like now where it's gloomy, so in
this is the June gloom.
Yeah.
Subtle, like that. There actually is different weather. It's just like very subtle variations, and you learn to be like attuned to it when you live here.
Yeah.
And it's actually like I sort of look forward to the fall. I know right around Halloween, the air will be a little smoky from like a wildfire.
Yes.
Some leaves do fall. You might get like some Santa Ana winds, but like you can start to pick it out. I mean, it's getting a little bit more unpredictable, but
and different flowers bloom at different times. As always, I mean, flowers are always blooming, but different ones are blooming at different times of the year.
We just got through jasmine season. Yeah, jasmine bloom.
Oh yeah, no, we have a big jasmine bush near our house actually. No, it's been an adjustment. I mean, the Boston area, I've never felt more at home anywhere in my entire life. Like, it's just, I love it so much. So leaving it was extremely difficult. And I just feel so out of place here, you know?
Yeah, right.
But I love it. I mean, it's beautiful here, and I love being on the South Bay area, South Shore. I don't know what FC. I don't even know what to call it.
South Bay.
South Bay. Okay. I love that area. I love being near the beach. That's a wonderful thing. The ocean is my favorite ecosystem, so I love being near that. So it's going to take a while to sort of feel comfortable in my own skin here.
Find the niche.
Yeah, I've got this amazing farmer's tan. As you can see.
Would you ever go back to Boston, do you think?
I would, yeah, in a heartbeat. But our lives are here. I mean, this is where, like, living in Boston with a baby would be unbearably difficult right now. Having the family support is awesome. Is really, because we have a lot of friends in Boston, and more of those friends are having children, you know, but we would be on our own, you know. There's no support.
Right.
My family's in Texas, you know, hers are here. So,
and you're not going to move back to Texas?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had friends who've had, like, they're married and they've had very hardline negotiations about geography. It's like we're going to do this, but, like, I will not move to Duluth. Like, we're not doing it, or whatever it is. Nothing against Duluth. But. Yeah. And then do you have anything in the works, or is it kind of just like floating right now?
I'm trying. I'm very much a process guy. I'm very much a I always quote or paraphrase the Flaubert's thing about keep your life orderly so your mind can go wild. And my life is just not orderly right now. But order is slowly beginning to appear. You know, Katie's is back to working full time, which is great. Audrey is in school 2 days a week now. We're at my in-laws' house, so I don't have a place to be, you know, I don't have an office. But I do now have, like, a rented little office space, you know, and in one of those shared spaces kind of things, that I go to, you know, as many times as I can. So order is beginning to, you know, I think when we find our own place, when she starts to go to school, then I have a routine, and it is obviously not going to be the routine I had back in Boston, but it'll be a different routine. And so that's where my focus is really on trying to create the conditions to be productive again. I'm certainly trying. That dedicated office space it's not for writing emails. It's not for doing Cape May related stuff. It's for doing new work. So I get in that office space, I put on noise canceling headphones, you know, and I just do I pull on whatever threads I have, you know. And I work in Scrivener, and I have tons and tons and tons of fragments of just things. And I just sort of it's like pulling at whatever thing is interesting me at the time. And lately I've been feeling a little bit more, there's something where I'm starting to feel that charge a little bit on one of those threads.
Which one? Can you tell me about it?
No, absolutely. I can't. I'm one of those, like, sworn to secrecy until it is something, you know.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. It's preemptive. You don't want to. like ruin it, or things could change.
Yeah, and it will change. Next week it'll be a different thing. But I'm starting to feel that the feeling I love, which is just like, oh yes, that's interesting, and I'm going to keep thinking about this when I walk away.
Former heavy metal band lead singer, moves to El Segundo, gets a farmer's tan. Well, it's good to meet you, man.
Thanks, man.
Congrats on the success of your novel. Enjoy it. Enjoy the moment.
I'm trying. Yes.
You know, enjoy your baby. She's 2. Two's actually a good age. I think
she's amazing. She's
They're like
so
half
adorable.
baby, half person. It's kind of a cute age. And hopefully we'll run into each other here in Southern California.
I hope so. Yeah. Thank you so much, man.
Okay, everybody, there you go. That is Chip Cheek. His debut novel is called Cape May. It's available from Celadon Books. You can find Chip online at chipcheek.com. He's on Twitter. His handle over there is @ChipCheek. Once again, the novel is called Cape May. Go get your copy. Go get it. Snatch it up. Thanks to Kill Rock Stars and the band Stereo Total, as always, for the theme song music. Thank you to Tiger in My Tank for the interstitial music. If you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/otherpplpod. If you would like to write to me, the address is letters@otherppl.com. Tell me what you think. Tell me a story. Don't forget about the Otherppl with Brad Listi app. This show has its own official app. It is free. Go get the app. It's free. So yeah, it's interesting the way that trauma works on us, the stuff of our lives. You can't bury it. That's maybe the biggest lesson of all. You might think you can, but it finds its way out, you know? You might think you can go around it, when the truth of the matter is that even if you feel like you are going all the way around it, you're right in it. So you just got to go through it. I had an odd 20s. I realize that now. Sort of monk-like. Next week on the program, I will be talking with J. Ryan Stradle. He'll be back on the show for a second time. He is celebrating the publication of his new novel, The Lager Queen of Minnesota. You almost have to say that title with a Minnesota accent just to get it out. The Lager Queen of Minnesota. J. Ryan Stradle, of course, is the author of Kitchens of the Great Midwest, which was a big debut bestseller. This is the follow-up. It has been earning incredible rave reviews, and such a good guy and a pillar of the literary community. Good people, good conversation. Stay tuned for that one coming up next week. So I hope you're doing well out there. Hope the summer is going well. Stay cool. If you place your attention on something difficult, it weakens its power. Just your attention. Like, you don't have to grapple with it or pull it apart or answer to it or figure it out or criticize it, but just watch it, hold it, see it, call it by name, sit there,